Well, hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Ashmit Kumar, and here are the headlines that we're tracking this evening. Bulls maintain the winning momentum on the Lal Street. Sensex and Nifty gained nearly 1%, led by IT stocks. Mid-cap and small-cap indices hit a record high. Paytm CEO Shekhar Sharma met with RBI officials yesterday after the central bank's crackdown. Sources say there was no forward movement on any remedial measures. Select startups write to the government and RBI seeking relief for Paytm Payments Bank. Meanwhile, both Jio Financial Services and Paytm rubbish reports of a prospective wallets business deal. Company Law Tribunal agrees to hear Zee's application seeking enforcement of the $10 billion merger with Sony. Tribunal seeks Sony's response within 2 weeks. Sony argues the investor has no locus in this case. Zee argues only an Indian court can decide the fate of the merger. Interbank call rate stays around 6.5% for a third day as the monetary policy meeting kicks off. The CNBC-TV18 Citizens Monetary Policy Committee unanimously expects a status quo on key policy rates, but the panel is divided on a potential change in stance. Parliamentary Committee on Finance bats for a cut in the 18% GST rate for insurance, also calls for a cut in the 100 crore rupee capital requirement to encourage smaller players and markets, a pitch for composite licensing. HDFC Bank Group gets RBI nod to acquire up to 9.5% stake in 6 private banks, including ICICI, IndusInd, Axis, Yes Bank, among others. HDFC Bank tells CNBC-TV18 that the approval is for potential investment by the asset management and life insurance subsidiaries. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken heads to Egypt after meeting the Saudi Crown Prince as he hopes for an enduring end to the Gaza crisis. More than 100 people killed after a dozen Israeli strikes in the last 24 hours. More than 27,500 Palestinians have been killed in the last 4 months, according to the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry. The Indian Energy Week begins in Goa. Prime Minister Modi expects investment worth $67 billion in the next 5 to 6 years. Also projects India's oil demand to double in 20 years. Uttarakhand government tables the Uniform Civil Code bill in the Assembly, becomes the first state to move towards adopting a uniform civil code after independence. The bill, among others, bans bigamy and makes it mandatory to register live-in relationships. Also, a woman shall be entitled to claim maintenance if she is deserted by her live-in partner. Scheduled tribes have been kept outside the ambit of the bill. Well, let's begin with a look at the day's market action. Bulls maintained the winning momentum on the Lal Street. Sensex gained over 400 points to reclaim the 72,000 mark. The Nifty gained over 150 points to move closer to the 22,000 mark. The mid-cap and small-cap indices hit a record high, led by a rally in PSUs. Financials underperformed, with the Nifty Bank Index ending marginally in the red. Well, but here's the big story this evening. Shares of Paytm's parent company, 197 Communications, recovered in today's trade after declining over 40% in the last 3 trading sessions. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that Paytm founder and CEO Shekhar Sharma met RBI officials yesterday to discuss the regulatory action against Paytm Payments Bank. However, there was no forward movement on any remedial measures. Meanwhile, select startups have written to the government as well as to the central bank, urging them to consider rolling back the restrictions on Paytm Payments Bank. Ritu Singh joining us now with more details. Ritu, give us a sense, tell us more about the Paytm crisis.
Well, yes, Paytm's founder Shekhar Sharma did have a meeting with RBI officials over the Paytm Payments Bank matter, but there's not much to write about just yet. We understand that there has been no forward movement or any relief provided by the regulator, and these restrictions are likely to remain. But while the bank's troubles may not have ended, the free fall in Paytm shares seems to have found a bottom. We saw the 197 stock rising in trade, closing about 3% higher after 3 relentless days of selling. Meanwhile, we understand a bunch of startup founders have penned a letter to the Prime Minister's office, the Finance Ministry, as well as the Reserve Bank of India, urging them to reconsider the sanctions on the bank. Now, these founders, about 12 of them, which includes, we understand, the likes of Innovate, Capital Mind, Make My Trip, Bharat Matrimony and others, have said in their letter that such actions on the bank would have far-reaching consequences for the ecosystem. They could impact millions of users, impact India's image as a business-friendly nation. And these founders have also urged RBI to consider engaging in a dialogue with the bank and give them a window of opportunity to rectify the deficiencies. It's unusual, yes, to see this kind of a reaction from the community, but we understand there are also others in this community that did not associate themselves with the letter. So you have both sides, when it comes to this story. In other developments, of course, following some reports of a potential sale of Paytm's wallet business to Jio Financial, both Paytm Payment Bank, as well as Jio Financial have clarified to exchanges that they have not engaged in any such discussions, calling these news reports suggesting otherwise false and speculative.
Right, Ritu, thanks a lot for those inputs. But more from the banking space now. HDFC Bank Group has received RBI's approval to acquire up to 9.5% stake in Yes Bank, IndusInd, Axis Bank, ICICI Bank, Suryoday Small Finance Bank and the Bandhan Bank. The approval shall stand cancelled if the group fails to acquire stake within 1 year. In a clarification to CNBC-TV18, the private lender said that the central bank's approval is not for HDFC Bank as a standalone entity, but the entire group. Well, now to the money markets. Interbank call rates has stayed around 6.5% for the third consecutive day. This even after the Reserve Bank announced a reverse repo auction to keep yields from falling further. Money market dealers have said that a lower call rate is an indication of a more dovish position by the RBI. The 3-day meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee has begun and a decision on rates is scheduled for Thursday. The CNBC-TV18 Citizens Monetary Policy Committee is unanimously expecting a status quo on rates, but the panel is divided on a potential change in stance and the timeline for the first rate cut.
What will be the rate action from the MPC on Thursday? Samiran?
We are not expecting any policy rate action.
No action. Pause. Sonal?
Pause.
Okay. Shaumya?
No action.
Okay. Sajid?
Pause.
Okay. Dr. Sen, what do you vote?
Hold.
Hold. Okay. Pause. So the chairman is with the committee. That's unanimous. But I think on the stance we may have... let me rephrase the stance. Should the stance remain the same? Prepare the markets for a change or actually change? So, Sonal?
Prepare for change.
Prepare for change. Samiran?
Our base case is for no change in stance, but we would not be surprised if RBI does change the wording a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Shaumya?
No change in stance as of now.
No change. Okay. Sajid?
I would think, given inflation, soften the language to prepare for some change.
Prepare for change. Oh, good. We're getting some disagreement here. Dr. Sen?
They should prepare for a change, but at the moment, I think, given that nothing else is happening, I think it's better that they move to neutral so that the investors are given the feeling that 3 better days are ahead.
Okay, so that's 3 different votes. 2 people no change, 2 people prepare for a change, and the chairman go ahead and change your stance. A final quick question. When do you all expect the first rate cut? Sonal?
August, with risk of earlier cuts.
Samiran?
We are also in August.
August. Okay. Saumya?
Second quarter, mostly August.
Okay. Sajid?
If the Fed cuts in May, June is on the table, I think.
Okay, June and 3 August. Dr. Sen?
Not before June.
Okay, well, that's more or less. It's either June or August, and the committee is divided. I think it's for August that they are voting.
Well, the MPC decision on Thursday. Moving ahead now, the Adani Group is in talks to raise about $500 million via dollar bonds. According to a Bloomberg report, Adani Green Energy is discussing the transaction with a group of foreign banks, including a U.S. firm. The sale is expected later this year and is yet to be finalized. This will be Adani Group's first overseas issuance since Hindenburg Research accused it of fraud and stock manipulation. In other news, the NCLT Mumbai's bench heard Zee Entertainment's application seeking the implementation of its $10 billion merger with Sony on the 12th of March. The tribunal has clubbed Zee's application with that of its shareholder Mad Men Film Ventures. Remember, Mad Men Film Ventures previously approached the NCLT seeking implementation of the merger. Yash Jain joining us now with more details. Yash, just on Sunday, we had the emergency arbitrator allowing Zee to proceed with its NCLT application. 48 hours later, we have Zee approaching the NCLT Mumbai. Why is today's hearing significant?
Well, Ashmit, multiple, of course, legal proceedings as far as the Zee-Sony merger is concerned. As far as today's NCLT hearing is concerned, it was kept very, very short as far as the hearing goes. Zee Entertainment essentially, objected to Sony's decision to terminate this particular merger agreement, the scheme of agreement between the company and Sony. And the second thing is that they sought the National Company Law Tribunal's direction when it comes to enforcing this scheme of agreement or the merger agreement between Zee Entertainment and Sony. Sony, on the other hand, challenged the maintainability of Zee's position when it's seeking directions from NCLT in terms of enforcing this merger scheme. And there's a third party again as far as this particular legal matter at NCLT is concerned. As you alluded to, that's Mad Men Films, which has also sort of, sought directions from the NCLT when it comes to enforcing this merger scheme between Zee Entertainment and Sony. As far as Sony's stand is concerned, they challenge and question the locus for Mad Men Films in this particular matter, terming their particular intervention just as a proxy for Zee Entertainment. But NCLT was anyway scheduled to hear Mad Men's application on March 12th. Now that Zee's application also came and the prayer was largely similar, NCLT said that they will hear the matter combined together on March 12th. In between, of course, notices would be issued to Sony. They'll have to reply within the next 2 weeks on Zee's stance, asking NCLT on enforcement of this merger scheme, and eventually on March 12th is when the tribunal hears the matter again.
Right, Yash, thanks a lot for that update. So the next key date to watch will be, of course, March 12th, Zee's application, as well as its shareholders' application up for hearing, seeking the enforcement of the Sony merger. Moving ahead now, Walmart-backed payments aggregator PhonePe has appointed 3 new members to its board in a bid to strengthen the governance. In a regulatory filing, the company has announced that the former Revenue Secretary, Tarun Bajaj, will join its board, along with Walmart CFO John Rainey and Chief People Officer Donna Morris. In some earnings action now, Nykaa's parent company, FSN E-Commerce Ventures, has posted a 98% year-on-year growth in net profit for the third quarter. Revenue growth has also double-digit growth, growing 22%, while EBITDA rose 26%. The company has said that the strong performance was fueled by robust demand for beauty products in the festival and wedding season. Meanwhile, auto major Ashok Leyland reported a mixed bag in the third quarter. Net profit and margins beat the street's expectations, while revenue missed the mark. On an annual basis, net profit rose more than 60% to 580 crore rupees, while revenue jumped nearly 3% to over 9,200 crore rupees. And Tata Group's combined market capitalization crossed the 30 lakh crore rupee mark in today's trade. This comes after the shares of TCS briefly hit a record high and touched a market capitalization of 15 lakh crore rupees for the first time. The Tata Group now contributes 8% to the BSE's total market cap. And the second edition of the India Energy Week has kick-started in Goa today. The 4-day conference will focus on key themes of energy transition, energy security, and roadmap for sustainable growth. In his opening remarks, Prime Minister Modi said that he expects investments worth $67 billion in the next 5 to 6 years. He also projected that India's oil demand will double in 20 years.
भारत इस समय एनर्जी पर इतना निवेश कर रहा है जितना पहले कभी नहीं हुआ और इसलिए आज दुनिया में ऑयल, गैस और एनर्जी सेक्टर से जुड़ा करीब करीब हर लीडर भारत में निवेश करना चाहता है। कितने ही लीडर्स इस समय मेरे सामने बैठे हुए हैं। हम पूरी गर्मजोशी से आपका भी स्वागत करते हैं।
Well, the state-owned Petronet LNG has signed a long-term deal with Qatar Energy to purchase 7.5 million tons of liquefied natural gas. The contract has been renewed for 20 years from 2028 to 2048. Under the new agreement, the LNG supplies will be made on delivered basis. Some international news now. The Israel-Hamas war rages on. More than 100 people have been killed after a dozen Israeli strikes in the last 24 hours. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is on a visit to the Middle East to push for a ceasefire in Gaza and release of hostages. He will be meeting Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in Cairo today. Earlier, he met Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh. The two leaders discussed steps for a regional coordination to bring to an end this crisis in Gaza. In global earnings now, Swiss banking giant UBS beat the street's expectations in the fourth quarter. The group posted a net loss attributable to shareholders of $279 million for the quarter. This is the second consecutive loss posted, and this is largely attributable to the costs incurred while acquiring Credit Suisse. The bank has also announced that it will recommend a share buyback worth up to $1 billion in the second half of the year. And gaming giant Nintendo reported a steady third quarter, beating Street's expectations on most parameters. On an annual basis, the company's net profit rose 18% to $92 million. However, net sales dropped by 6% to $4 billion. The company has raised its previous sales forecast, citing that it expects to 15.5 million of its flagship consoles in the current fiscal year. And oil giant BP's annual profit fell to $13.8 billion in 2023 from a record $27.7 billion in the previous year. However, its fourth quarter profit beat the analysts' expectations. Despite a drop in the annual profit, the company announced plans to boost shareholder returns through a dividend and a $1.75 billion share buyback. And well, with that, it's time now to slip into a very short break. But coming up, Parliamentary Committee on Finance bats for a cut in the 18% GST rate for insurance, also calls for a cut in the 100 crore rupee capital requirement to encourage smaller players. Details when we come back. Welcome back. The Parliamentary Committee on Finance has recommended GST rate reduction for health insurance products, retail policies for senior citizens, among others. The committee has also sought that the 100 crore rupee capital requirement to encourage smaller players and makes a pitch for composite licensing. Parikshit Luthra joining us now with more details. Parikshit, take us through the panel's recommendations.
Well, the Parliamentary Committee on Finance has met officials from the industry, from IRDAI, the Ministry of Finance, and has looked at ways to strengthen the insurance sector in India. They have noted that it's going very fast in a very robust manner, but at the same time, insurance penetration remains very low. Now, one of their top recommendations is rationalizing the GST rate on insurance products, which is 18% at present, and specifically, they speak about health insurance products, particularly retail policies for senior citizens and micro-insurance policies. These are sectors or products where the tax rate can be rationalized. Also, the capital requirement, the minimum capital requirement of 100 crores for companies to enter the insurance sector. This, they feel, needs to be rationalized so that smaller niche players can enter and cover wider geographies in the country. A composite license must be considered. Now, this is something which is complicated. It will need amendments to the Insurance Act. And this is what the Finance Ministry has recommended, that if you bring this policy with a composite licensing arrangement, that could give a major push to the insurance sector. The Ayushman Bharat scheme, they have pondered over this in great detail and said that if you allow the missing middle to participate, it can become effective for a very large section of Indians. There should also be a roadmap to strengthen the four public sector insurance companies, and disinvestment is one of the options to strengthen them. And finally, they have said that IRDAI must consider instituting an ombudsman to deal with consumer grievances on the lines of the RBI.
We have found that the GST rate that we have 18%, which basically started from the service tax, which was, of course, as you know, 15-16% and has now gone to 18%, is a tax rate that we do need to think about, particularly for certain insurance products like health insurance. So some of these very important protections that our families need, it's important to think about what the right rate for GST should be.
Well, the Uttarakhand government has tabled the Uniform Civil Code bill in the Assembly, becoming the first state to move towards adopting a Uniform Civil Code after independence. The bill, among other measures, bans bigamy and makes it mandatory to register live-in relationships. Also, a woman shall be entitled to claim maintenance if she's deserted by her live-in partner. Scheduled tribes, importantly, have been kept outside the ambit of this bill. At least 11 persons, importantly, have been killed and over 60 injured after a major fire broke out in a firecracker factory in Madhya Pradesh's Harda district. According to state officials, the injured have been admitted to the hospital and over 100 ambulances have been dispatched from nearby districts. Chief Minister Mohan Yadav has announced an ex gratia sum of 4 lakh rupees for the deceased. Rescue operations are still ongoing. The Enforcement Directorate raided several locations linked to the Aam Aadmi Party officials in Delhi today. Residences of AAP MP N.D. Gupta, Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's personal secretary Bibhav Kumar and former Delhi Jal Board member Shalabh Kumar were reportedly raided in connection with a money laundering case. However, AAP alleged that the raids were a reaction to an expose against ED scheduled by Delhi Cabinet Minister Atishi. And well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business 360. More news and updates will continue right here on CNBC TV18.